Hello and welcome again to another edition of Now You Know. I'm Dale Wilson, your host. Today our special guest is Bob Larson. Bob is on the cutting edge of technology with the C.R.T.C group here in Port Angeles, and he's been kind enough to come in and visit with us a little bit today to try to help us all understand a little bit more about this composite technology. Bob, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thanks, Dale. It's great to be here.
Would you start off by just telling those people who may be hearing about composites technology, recycling for the first time, what it is it's all about?
Sure. Well, composites is kind of a broad range of materials that really means that it's a blend of two or more different materials. And there's composites, most people are familiar with fiberglass, which actually is a composite.
Okay.
It's chopped. So fiberglass are chopped strands of thin glass in an epoxy, a resin, that's hardened. And as you know, you can make fiberglass into any shape you want pretty much. We see that in boats and shower stalls and a variety of things. So what our organization, the Composite Recycling Technology Center, is doing here in Clallam County is we are focusing on recycling high value composites. So for us that means carbon fiber that has been produced for the aerospace industry, and of which there is a surprisingly large amount of perfectly good material that's just going into the landfill. So we just think that is not a sustainable practice, and it's something that we believe we can recover the value of it, both from an energy savings point of view, which is massive. Actually, the numbers are very large, and as well as a functional point of view. So people may remember that we announced a supply agreement with Toray Composites of America. Toray has a large assembly or production facility in the Tacoma area. They are the sole supplier for the Boeing 787 all carbon fiber aircraft. And so what we are doing is we are rescuing, retrieving, or diverting, however you want to say it, kind of scraps from their production process. So,
like all falls in lumber, this would be something that's scraped off after the assembly of a wing.
Yeah, well, no, it's earlier in the production process. So let me step back and explain really what carbon fiber is. Thanks. And so, as the name suggests, there are thousands of thin threads of pure carbon that have been produced at great cost and with a massive investment of energy. And we'll talk about how that actually happens. It's a pretty interesting process. But hundreds and sometimes thousands of these individual fibers are pulled together in a flat mat. In this case, we're talking about a unidirectional composite, which means all the fibers are going in one direction. And
Are these microscopic or longer than that?
Well, when they're produced, they're actually about the size of a human hair. Okay. But then they are actually put together in a little bit, they're kind of woven. And so it's really, those of you who are familiar with fabrics and how like this tablecloth and our clothes are made, it's not all that different in the sense that you're starting out with fibrous material. And when I saw how they made this carbon fiber, it reminded me a lot of the technology that was developed for weaving. And actually, when you look back into the history of companies like Toray, they originally came out of the fabric making business, and in some cases the loom business.
Well, now what's a carbon fiber shirt going to feel like?
Well, actually, you know what? You can make carbon fiber into a very thin, flexible deal, and it would be actually softer, more pliable than this cotton right here. But anyway, let me get back to the story, how this is made. So there are hundreds of spools of this material that are all kind of pulled down and arrayed in a very close to each other, and they're like little dividing pins, you know, in a long, wide table. It's probably around 8 feet wide, and they are pulled down this moving belt, and they're closely aligned, and it's really cool how they use machine vision. There's actually cameras scanning that to make sure everything is lined up perfectly, because obviously you don't want any flaws, and especially you don't want any weak spots of a material going in an airplane. That's just not acceptable.
Uniform thickness, I'm sure.
Oh yes, so very uniform. And then there is a highly developed chemical resin, one would say an epoxy, that's applied to both sides of these fibers, and that is actually kind of scrimmed off so it's a uniform thickness. And after that has happened, it's applied to a backing paper. It's kind of a paper that's got a waxy film on it, you know, so it helps release it. And then pulled down and rolled up in a giant roll. So, and so what happens when Boeing gets it, they cut it into individual tapes, about anywhere from an inch to maybe 3 inches wide, and then that material is laid down by robotic placing machines that puts the material in exactly the right place and exactly the right thickness and exactly the right orientation of the fiber to give maximum strength. So this is a really high-tech process that is really carefully designed, so there's no excess material going into the final part, and all the material is laid up just where it needs to be to give the strength and the durability. Okay, so that's what the aircraft guys do.
Okay.
So what we do is we collect the edges of the rolls and the ends of the rolls. So again, because of the absolute necessity of having completely perfect material that goes into aircraft manufacture, they actually cut off anywhere from 1 to 2 inches on the side of the roll, because they're not 100% sure that the epoxy is uniformly applied. And in fact, in that process of kind of scrimming off the epoxy, some of it is kind of pushed off to the edges a little bit. So anyway, just as a matter of routine, they cut off those edges, and then kind of at the end of the roll, when that roll is full, there may be, you know, another meter or 2 or 3 of material left. And so when that roll is full, they cut that off, and then there's some stuff left over. Now in the past, this has been, in the cases of the edge trimmings, they literally were balling it up and throwing it into the nearest trash bin. Because quite honestly, the cost to transform that into something else was a lot more than it cost to take that and dump it into the, you know, landfill. So probably the tipping fee for these materials is in the neighborhood of $80 a ton, $80 to $90 a ton. So it's so much easier and cheaper for them to do that than to actually figure out a way to reuse this. So as the demand for carbon fiber has increased because of the growth of the aerospace industry and the fact that more planes are being made out of it, and the fact that it's such a lightweight, strong material, there's tremendous efficiency gains when it's used in an aircraft. The volume of this material going to landfill has grown dramatically over the last, let's say, decade or so on. But there's more than 2 million pounds of this material that is just being buried in the ground.
And that's in Washington alone.
And that's in Washington alone. In the U.S., it's around 30 million tons, and in the world, it's somewhere in the 50-some million tons. I mean, this is a massive amount of premium material that's basically being thrown away. Now, so
I guess heretofore there's not been an aftermarket for it.
yeah, so yeah, it was so much easier, and the same thing goes for the Boeings and the Airbuses and the people who use this stuff. They have lots of scrap in their processing too. It's hard for people to comprehend how much that adds up to. But when you build a composite aircraft, there's something on the order of 30% of the material that they buy ends up not going into the airplane. Wow. It's not used. So, as we really try to, how can I say, so we retool, reinvent, reimagine our industrial system going forward in an era of carbon-constrained future, if we want to deal with climate change and all the other environmental fallout from that, we have to rethink how we use these primary materials. And this goes for all materials, by the way, metals and all that stuff, but it's particularly acute here because this is a material that has a massive amount of energy embodied in it. It has these incredible properties, and just as a rule of thumb, one would think about this carbon fiber as having something on the order of 5 times more strength than steel, but the weight of the material is somewhere about only 25% of what steel is. So you've got this incredible space age engineered material, and we're throwing like 1/3 of the stuff into the garbage. I mean, how can that make sense in the long run? So what we're actually trying to do at the C.R.T.C. is something that people have been searching for a solution for a long time, and is actually one of the constraining factors for the growth of the whole carbon fiber industry. And it's one of the reasons, incidentally, there's so much interest and support, not only in the US, but around the world for what we're doing. So this is the first place in the world where we're trying to demonstrate you can take what was formerly garbage and transform it into high-value products that people actually want to buy.
Now, that's almost as good as the Midas story.
It took making
or Rapunzel spinning straw into gold.
Absolutely. In fact, we have kind of a catchphrase where we talk about this scrap carbon fiber as black gold, because that's really what it is. Now we have there are opportunities and barriers and risks involved in this, and there's a reason why nobody's been able to do this in the past. And part of that reason is no one really approached this in the way that we are doing it. And when you talk to an Airbus or a Boeing or some other large aircraft manufacturer and you say, well, hey, this is some good stuff, why don't you do something with it? It's that kind of, they agree, yeah, we would love to find a solution to this, but it's so far outside their core business that it's a very big distraction for them. Everybody wants to, everybody in the business, from the carbon fiber makers to the users, want to find a solution, but to date, nobody has figured out how to make a business case for this, yeah? So that's what we're trying to do. So we've got an arrangement with Toray, which is a very good arrangement. There is more than enough material available that we can use in the near future, although we're trying hard to scale up very rapidly to use this material. And we're able to get this at a much lower cost than just what we call virgin carbon fiber.
Bob, hang on to that thought for a second. We'll talk about your business model in just a second.
Yep.
We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Bob Larson telling us about the carbon fiber technology, composites, recycling, and I'll get it right before the end of the show.
Okay,
we'll be right
thanks,
back.
Dale.
Hi, welcome back. I'm Dale Wilson, your host for Now You Know. Our guest today is Bob Larson with the C.R.T.C. Composites Recycling here in Port Angeles. Bob, you gave us a really good background. I think I know more about composites now than I ever have before. Let's talk about your business plan a little bit. This is kind of unique for this area. I think it's described as a independent nonprofit corporation. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, actually, that's a good point, Dale. There are many innovative things about the C.R.T.C. Not only are we pushing the boundaries on what this technology can do and what we can do with this reclaimed material, but we're also have kind of a unique organizational form. You know, and I attribute, well, obviously the whole existence of C.R.T.C. is actually goes back to the vision of the Port of Port Angeles and how they realized that we had to do something different if we really wanted to get economic development going in our community. I mean, it's clear that kind of the traditional format of economic development hadn't been working, and a lot of this had to do with the global economic situation. We all know about the major recession in the late 2000s and so forth. But it was clear that some new approach needed to be taken. So the port came up with a very innovative idea by saying, let's take this opportunity to recycle the scrap carbon fiber and set up a nonprofit corporation whose mission is really to benefit the citizens of Clallam County through economic development. And the way I got involved in this whole business, even before it was an official corporation, was I was recruited to be on the board of directors over a year ago now. And we worked through the various options and ways to kind of get the company up and running and how it should be organized. And so we actually have established a 501c3 nonprofit, so that's a charitable organization. But we're not soliciting money from anybody as far as donations go, but we did want to have the structure that means that instead of having shareholders and investors in that way, we are actually responsible for the benefit of the community as a whole. So this is a company that's set up in a way that's really unusual. We are totally committed to using this technology and the results of what we're doing to provide good jobs for our community, to grow and to create an industry. Really, we're trying to birth a worldwide industry here that will have long-term stability and offer a wide variety of job opportunities to people around, people in Clallam County. So, one of our visions is to give opportunities for people who are growing up here to actually work in a world-class, cutting-edge technology company right here in one of the most beautiful places in the world. So instead of going to the I-5 corridor or going somewhere else, we want to make Port Angeles a destination for the best and brightest to stay here or to come here, move here and work.
Let me ask you this. I've heard you speak on this in a couple of different venues, and I think it's always been music to my ears when you talk about family wage supporting jobs that will accrue to this composites.
Right.
First of all, what do you consider a family wage supporting job for this area?
Yeah, that's a very very good question, and something we're kind of asking ourselves also. But we're talking about a job that probably is in the $20 to $30 an hour range. And one of the cool things about the way we see our company evolving is that there's a whole family of different jobs. Clearly, we're going to need people to actually work in a manufacturing environment and to help make things. In order to be competitive, we believe that the making process has to have a fair degree of automation to it, but still we need people to help make the stuff in the factory. So there's that. However, there is an enormous opportunity in the design, the engineering side, marketing, communications, and all different kinds of things, including computer programming. We're not going to ignore the importance of software and it's kind of fashionable to think about the Internet of Things, how things are all interlinked and connected. We have to play in that arena, and we intend to. So again, unlike some other traditional forms of employment around here, we want to build a really interesting, diverse set of opportunities for people to work.
Will these jobs, the actual manufacturing jobs, will they be machine operators or actually handling the material, or what's going to be the biggest block of jobs available?
Probably in the manufacturing side, although that's a little bit further out. I mean, right now we have a lot of activity in the research and development side, and also what we call production engineering. By that I mean we are actually inventing the machines that we need to use to recover this material. And actually, I think this is a good point to actually talk about what that looks like for us. And in the earlier segment, I talked about the material that we're collecting and what form it's in. So typically, again, it's in a narrow strip, very long. It's prime material. It's some of the best carbon fiber available anywhere. But the form that we get it is not very usable. We actually are inventing automated machines that will take this tape, peel it off its backing paper, chop it up into consistent lengths, collect those chopped up pieces, and what we call collate or format or spread them out in a thin layer. And that becomes the actual form of the recycled material that we can use. It's worth taking a little diversion here, and I hope this is not too technical or anything, but the tape we get is called unidirectional, so everything's going in one way. Lots of carbon fiber is actually woven, and if you actually see some carbon fiber, you'll see that it's woven. But because we're chopping up all these fibers, it's really important that the orientation of the fibers are random. And if we can ensure that, we know that the material strength of what we get as recycled product will be at least 90% as good as the original material.
Okay, now let me be understood.
Yeah.
When it comes off the roll in manufacture, all of the strands are oriented in the same direction. But
yes.
You're saying that you'll take the scrap and chop it up, and it can actually be reformatted to where it does not have to be unidirectional again.
Yes, in fact, we want a random mix, and I guess the best analogy for this is how you make chipboard, how you make building materials, and actually it's a wonderful analogy to think about how the timber industry, how the wood industry took what essentially was a waste product, which were all the chips of the wood and all this random stuff. They didn't know what to do with it. It was just a waste stream. They tended to burning it or burying it. And then someone had the bright idea of, hey, you know what, if we actually put this in some resin, some glue, some epoxy, and we randomly oriented it, we could have a product that's actually stronger.
Oriented strand board.
Or OSB, that's exactly right. So that's what we're doing with carbon fiber, that, in theory, and that's the theory of it. So after we get, we turn all these long little strips into randomly oriented kind of sheets, Then we can take those sheets and put them into molds, and we can mold almost anything. So again, this is almost like the fiberglass analogy, except in fiberglass they kind of spray it on. Here we're actually making a thin mat where we are, we can control the depth of the mat and blah blah. But we're putting it in a mold, and the way we're curing the carbon fiber is by squeezing it and putting heat on it. So, but the fact that we're transforming this material into a format that is, very flexible and has many hundreds of different applications is a massive benefit. So that's kind of where we're thinking about. In the short term, we are actually going to be using this material and making things ourselves. In the longer term, when we are thinking about, we have a goal of displacing 1 million pounds of this material in 5 years. In order to get to that 1 million pounds, we're going to have to actually make this material as a feedstock for other companies who will take it and make things out of it.
So now let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Does it have to be, I understand from an article you wrote and shared with us, this has to be kept frozen or at least refrigerated during the manufacturing process. Now, once you get it into this mat that will be your product,
right,
does that have to remain frozen like that too?
Well, the idea is to take that mat as soon as possible and turn it into a product. In the interim stage, we realize we probably will be able to make the kind of mat format material faster than we can actually process it right now. So we'll actually put that back in the freezer.
And if you sell it to somebody in China, does it have to remain frozen from here to China?
Yeah, I doubt it makes economic sense to ship that far, but yeah, it's pretty common to use refrigerated or freezer trailers to move stuff around, and that's how we're going to get our material from Tacoma. It's going to be put in a reefer truck, and driven up here. So
let me ask you this.
Yeah,
You were talking about inventing machines.
Yes.
Now, do we have the talent here in Clallam County to invent the type of machines that you need?
I'm glad you asked that question. I mentioned we hired our first employees in May. One of them is a very creative, talented
Go ahead and shout out, give
technician.
their names if you want to give them some recognition, or if you don't want to embarrass them.
No, I don't want. This is not intended to embarrass at all.
Okay.
This young man's named Joel Lippold, and he is very creative and actually working on machines that'll do things. So he is right now in the almost third generation of an automated chopping machine. And we're at the point now where we can probably do on the neighborhood of 100 feet chopped in about a minute, which is, we're getting to the point where we're saying, yeah, now we're getting to the point where we can actually, that's getting to be a production level volume.
So this is not something you could put in your paper shredder and get the desired result?
No, not really. And actually, I'm glad you brought up that temperature thing, and I want to return to that in a second. But anyway, it turns out that when you're handling this material and chopping it, controlling its temperature is very important. It's actually a little easier to handle when it's cold, and it also has the right kind of what we call tackiness when it's in the temperature window. So actually, this machine borrows technology from the food processing industry to control the temperature of the rollers and so forth in the machine. So it's very cool, actually.
Bob, hold that thought right there, and we're going to take another break, and we'll be right back, and we'll be right back with you. This is Now You Know. I'm Dale Wilson, your host. We're talking with Bob Larson. We'll be right back. Hi, and welcome back. I'm Dale Wilson, your host for Now You Know. Our special guest today is Bob Larson. Bob Larson is CEO of C.R.T.C. I'll get that right before this program is over. Bob is telling us all about the composites program, started up here at the port, now spun off as a independent nonprofit. So Bob, you've given us a great orientation as to the product and some of the complexities of dealing with it and some of the nuances with it. Let's talk about product. What are some of the products that you foresee developing here in Port Angeles?
After all, we're just starting up. We're having to invent many of the processing machinery that will be used to make this stuff. So, these are going to be relatively simple products, but we believe targeted well into very fast-growing marketplaces.
Walking sticks?
Yeah, well, it turns out that
hiking poles?
It turns out that tubular products are a very good application for this. But
snow skis?
We are
up and down for yes, and
yeah,
side to side for no.
No, we can't. No, we're not. And it's not like I'm trying to hide anything. It's just like we're not 100% sure. So we've in exactly how these products are going to be rolled out.
Is there anywhere in the world that is doing what we're talking about doing now that has products out there that might be mimicked?
Well, nobody is doing what we're doing right now. However, there are real competitive implications for what we're doing. Don't forget, we're going to be entering a market with a super premium material at a very low cost point. So that's going to be quite disruptive. And our general philosophy is we won't enter any market segment until we are confident we can bring a product that has class-leading attributes and really, in fact, some really innovative attributes that at a lower price point than what's going on.
Do you anticipate a bigger market for finished products or for the material that you actually recycle and provide to other manufacturers?
Yeah, that's a good point. In the beginning, we're going to go and actually try to capture the value of the material by making products and selling them. And we're looking into a variety of distribution methods. We're looking into kind of wholesaling opportunities, but we're also going to be selling some of these direct to consumers.
Well, by now you're bound to have some molds created. What are we building, Bob?
Yeah. Well, I've resisted really getting too much in detail of our product discussions because, to be honest, we're not 100% there on any of these products. We have several in, I would say, advanced stages of development. We are at the point now where we're making prototypes and getting them out to some of our partners for testing. And it kind of depends on the feedback we get from them as to what direction we go. We're hoping we're going to get wow, this is fantastic. We love this stuff. Can you make some for us? We're not quite there yet. We have developing a number of important relationships where we think we will have ways to get to market in a very efficient way. So, 3 months from now, we'll be in a lot better place to talk about it. In fact, we're trying to plan for an event in the next couple of months where we're going to be able to talk much more openly about this. But right now, until we actually have some contracts on, with signing the dotted line, I really can't get too specific. So just hang in there. We'll be there soon.
In your article, you quoted Henry Ford, and it brings to mind when Henry Ford first opened the mass production lines in Detroit. It wasn't too long before he instituted a minimum wage of $5 a day. And everybody was upset with him because he was paying too blame much. Now, you're going to be at $25, $30 an hour, you're going to be paying more than a lot of the wages for the other companies in town. How are you going to deal with the blowback when you go to the Chamber of Commerce or the Business Association and they tell you you're paying too blame much?
Well, I think that's pretty short-sighted on people's part if they're really thinking that. I mean,
I agree, but it's out there. It's happening. They're already complaining about other people paying too much.
Well, then I think it's time to shake the labor market up then, isn't it?
Are you prepared to do that? Are you prepared to stand up and take the heat if they
Yeah, of course. I mean,
incoming?
yeah. Well, again, let me just be clear. There's going to be a range of jobs from, kind of the $15 an hour level up, and higher. And when we talk about living wage jobs, we're really talking about somewhere in the $20 to $30 range. That's our target for the bulk of our employees, and not everyone will get there at the same time. When people come in, they're kind of start proving themselves and starting out, and they start a little lower, and then we bring them along, blah blah blah. So, I mean, all that's kind of normal for any company, but we don't want non-thinking, robot-like automatons to work at C.R.T.C. We're not out to get people who, for example, that kind of getting back to the Henry Ford thing, were on that originally assembly line. This is a company that's really driven by creativity and innovation and high values. So we want people who are so committed to what we're doing and the importance of what we're doing that they are going to bring their very best to us every day. And we are trying so hard to build a trusting, coherent, strong team that people will want to work with us, almost regardless of how much money they're being paid.
Are there any particular personal safety gear that you have to wear in this environment, mask or eye protection, anything like that?
Well, certainly any
steel-toed boots.
Any kind of any production environment, the basic personal protective equipment is going to be needed. So safety glasses and steel-toed shoes and that kind of thing. And if you are actually going to be in contact with that pre-preg material, then you just have to wear nitrile gloves. And in fact, many people can handle this material without any without gloves, but some people's skins are sensitive to some of the elements in that epoxy. So just to be safe.
What about breathing apparatus for working around the solvent? I mean the epoxy.
No, we don't really need that, and actually that's one of the things about the way we're curing this material, that all the curing happens in this tight mold situation, and so that's not a concern, thankfully.
Let me ask you this. I think somewhere in your proposal, it was suggested that because the city and the county and the state had been so supportive of the project and provided a lot of the seed money and in fact provided the notoriety for you to attract state and federal money, I think somewhere was reported that you intended to pay back about 10% of the income to the community. How will that be figured? Before gross or net?
Well, that's a good question. As a nonprofit, our federal tax liability is limited, so that's a good thing. We still obviously pay state and local taxes and that kind of thing. But one of the important compensation elements are going to be bonuses paid to people. So we look at our kind of net earnings, and we calculate our payments to our employees and also the amount of money returning to our community based on that. So I think it's one of the a really unique feature of C.R.T.
No, wait, did I hear you say that 10% is going to be included in the wages you pay to the community, or is it going to be over and above the wages paid in the community?
Oh, it's over and above. Okay. So let me clarify that. So where we draw the line to calculate what the 10% is will be after we take care of all of our employees and all of our tax obligations and blah blah blah. But we want to have, I guess you'd call it profit sharing, although since we're a nonprofit, I guess you'd call it earnings sharing to our employees. And so it's very clear we have a bonus incentive program where people, we're able to hit our targets for efficiency and for production and for earnings. We definitely will be sharing a chunk of that with our employees. That's one of the great things about working with C.R.T.C. Will be. We haven't made anything yet, so that's our vision. But after that, we do plan on taking 10% of our retained earnings at the end of the year, and distributing that to the community. Now, exactly how we're going to do that has not been decided, but
Shouldn't it go back into the Opportunity Fund from which came the first $1 million of your development?
no, that came from state taxes. We'll be paying plenty of state taxes, so that's how the Opportunity Fund will be.
But the Opportunity Fund is there to create other jobs, just as we've done with those. Now,
Exactly.
if you get to pick and choose which organizations you give it to, there's always rumors of favoritism and back scratching and that sort of thing. Why not take it back to where it can be plowed into more jobs?
It's a good point. I don't, we haven't faced that decision right now, but my vision is this money will go into other nonprofits. And
United Way, Papa,
Food Bank, Serenity House.
they've already got a direct tap on the county treasury.
Well, to a certain extent, that's true. So maybe we can offset county taxes that way. But there are plenty of needs
for the
around.
homeless.
Absolutely, absolutely. And not only that, we haven't even touched on this, but we have a very strong commitment to education and improving education at the C.R.T.C. We haven't even mentioned the fact that we're co-located with a Peninsula College workforce development program. That's really, really important and something we're committed to strengthening.
Now, will a part of the profits be going to the college? Or, excuse me, revenues, you don't make any
Revenues,
profit.
yeah, right. We are actually sharing the costs of operating this building, so to a certain extent, I guess you would say that's true, but the college has other ways of raising money, so no, we're really talking about trying to benefit the people of the community directly. So, I'm not saying we would never do it. It kind of depends on how things will evolve over time, but...
Well, the reason I'm asking these type of questions is, of course, the college gets its own appropriations from the state.
Just
and,
so.
and some of the nonprofits here have regular appropriations from the city or the county or both. If you're going to be cutting edge on the technology, it would certainly be a good idea to be cutting edge on the revenues that are plowed back into the community. And I certainly hope that in upcoming board meetings that you can roll out an idea that you could share with us, so that I think more people would have more buy-in, knowing exactly what was going to be the benefit, because right now, even though it says nonprofit, unless there is some way of profit sharing with the community, it's just like any other corporation out there, Bob.
Well, yeah, you raise a good point. It's one of the reasons we want to give back to the community, but the difference is that most companies have an objective of enriching their owners and shareholders. We don't have any owners and shareholders other than the community. So that's why we feel so strongly about reinvesting in the community, and it may mean actually starting different kinds of businesses. It may mean providing low-income housing. It may mean doing all kinds of things. So,
Bob, we're getting close to time, so let
Yes.
me ask you, there's going to be a lot of intellectual properties that are created and spun off from this.
I hope so.
And let's just be completely optimistic and say that in 5 to 10 years, Bill Gates takes a look at this and says, I want to buy that for $1 billion. Now, are you going to give the community $100 million?
Well, that would be the plan, except of course you can't buy the company because we're organized as a nonprofit. But
All right, let's look at it the other way. It's a complete flop, but you've got the intellectual properties, you've got the machines, you're going to have to sell those off. Is that going to be something that would be still shared at the 10%, or you claim distress and say we're going to have to do something else?
well, Dale, gosh, we hadn't even thought about that scenario, but.
Well, you've got to have an exit strategy in every organization.
Well, actually, our strategy is to spin off businesses from the C.R.T.C. And they may be other nonprofits, they may be for-profits, they may be joint ventures. And the other thing that we haven't even touched on is that this business has such a large potential for international interest. So we intend to replicate or help replicate things like the C.R.T.C. around the country and even around the world. So, but all the profits from that that are coming into the C.R.T.C. or the earnings from that are subject to the give back to the community. And I hope we have the wonderful problem of figuring out a creative way of distributing all this money. I hope actually it'll be in the millions of dollars a year, and that can transform this area. And that's our mission in life, and to make life better for folks around here.
And now you know, straight from the mouth. Bob Larson, CEO of do it for me one more time, Bob.
C.R.T.C.
The Composites Recycling Technology Center out at the port. And I'm Dale Wilson. We're glad you joined us today for Now You Know. Do come again.